All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ARC podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the budget tonight. And the budget is going to be delivered by Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer. Now, to help me to meander through this, because you guys know I'm not particularly the best on all things economics. That's okay. You can't be an expert at everything. I've got Shaquille Letma, who is here and who's helping me on this particular topic. Shaquille, did you want to say hello to everyone after your long trip away?
Hello, everybody. And this is the reason I'm still single, Joel, because you get me in for all the boring stuff. Let's go through the budget.
Yeah, we've got a lot of videos we are backed up on. We were meant to do catch up. I got sick. Shaquille got a bit sick. And we've got a lot of streams we want to do. There's some great conversations out there that Gavin Newsom's been holding with Charlie Kirk, Steve Bannon. But we've also got some other streams that we want to do as well and dissect that and hold some debates. And so I'm very much looking forward to getting into this budget reply. So for you guys out there that are like, what the hell is this all about? Why is the media all talking about it? Why are they finally concerned about the cost of living crisis? It's because we've got an election coming up. On the 17th of May, it's the expected date that we have an election for this year. Anthony Albanese is still the favoured to actually win at this stage. So this is a very critical time to see what is the budget showing with regards to Labor's policies, which is we're going to see tonight, and what are we going to see with regards to the Liberals' policies. So Peter Dutton will be doing a reply on Thursday, which I'll also be doing a stream for. So in a second, we're going to see, I'm going to flick you over to the Parliament where Jim Chalmers, Anthony Albanese's Labor Treasurer, will be delivering his remarks about what their budget is. This thing is hundreds of pages long, so it's come out today. We haven't really been able to get through it all. Maybe Grok can help us a little bit. Why not? Because these things are far too complex. And maybe we can see exactly what Labor has in mind for people. There have been some fascinating tweets that have come out from Labor talking about, and I just want to show you very quickly, guys. We've got the Parliament here right now. You can see exactly what's going on over there. So they're just starting to find their seats, and very soon I'll flick right over. Don't worry, you won't miss a word. It looks, actually, you know what? It looks like they're starting right now, and they're just about to go into it. So I'm going to unmute this, and I'm going to go right into it.
I have received a message from Her Excellency the Governor-General recommending, in accordance with Section 56 of the Constitution, an appropriation for the purposes of the Appropriation Bill No. 1, 2025-2026. And I call the Treasurer.
Mr Speaker, I present the Appropriation Bill No. 1, 25-26 and the explanatory memorandum.
Thank you. I call the Clerk.
First reading, a bill for an act to appropriate money out of the Consolidated Revenue Fund for the ordinary annual services of the government and for related purposes.
And I give the call to the Treasurer.
I move that the bill be now read a second time, and I acknowledge the Ngunnawal people here and the Yuggera and the Yugambeh back home.
Well, thank goodness.
Speaker, this budget builds on the progress that we have made together. It's a plan to help with the cost of living, with 2 new tax cuts and higher wages, more bulk billing and more help with electricity bills, cheaper medicine and less student debt. It's a plan to build Australia's future, with more homes, new investments in skills and education, competition reforms and a future made in Australia. Yeah. Speaker, our economy is turning the corner. Inflation is down, incomes are rising, unemployment is low, interest rates are coming down, debt is down, and growth is picking up momentum. On all of these fronts, our economy and our budget are in better shape than they were 3 years ago. Yeah. Now, this progress has been exceptional but not accidental. The credit belongs to Australians in every corner of our country. Yeah. We've come a long way together, but there is more work to do. This budget is our plan for a new generation of prosperity in a new world of uncertainty. It's a plan to help finish the fight against inflation, rebuild living standards and maximise our national advantages into the future. This is a responsible budget with 5 main priorities: helping with the cost of living, strengthening Medicare, building more homes, investing in every stage of education, and making our economy stronger, more productive and more resilient. Speaker, the global economy is volatile and unpredictable. The 2020s have already seen a global pandemic, global inflation and now the threat of a global trade war. The whole world has changed as a consequence. Tariffs and tensions abroad have been accompanied by storms here at home. Ex-tropical cyclone Alfred could wipe 1/4 percentage point off quarterly growth. North and far north Queensland have flooded too. Storm clouds are gathering in the global economy as well. Trade disruptions are rising. China's growth is slowing. War is still raging in Europe and a ceasefire in the Middle East is breaking down. Treasury expects the global economy to grow 3.25% for the next 3 years, its slowest since the 1990s. It's already forecasting the 2 biggest economies in the world will slow next year, with risks weighing more heavily on both. Australia is neither uniquely impacted nor immune from these pressures, but we are among the best placed to navigate them. We're emerging from this spike in global inflation in better shape than almost any other advanced economy. Growth is forecast to pick up from 1.5% this year to 2.5% in 2026-27. The private sector is resuming its rightful place as the main driver of this growth, with Treasury upgrading forecasts for growth in private demand to more than double next year compared to this one. Unemployment is now projected to peak lower at 4.25%. Employment and real wage growth this year will be stronger and participation will stay near its record high for longer. Inflation is coming down faster as well. Treasury now expects inflation to be sustainably back in the band 6 months earlier than anticipated. Now, all of this means that the soft landing that we have been planning for and preparing for is now looking more and more likely. Because of our collective efforts, the worst is behind us and the economy is now heading in the right direction. But there's more work to do because we know that people are still under pressure. The cost of living is front of mind for most Australians and it is front and centre in this budget. We know the welcome improvements in the aggregate numbers don't always immediately translate to how people are feeling and faring. We've made a lot of progress together, but we know that many people are still doing it tough. Our plan to rebuild living standards starts with cost of living help and wages growth. It includes more hip pocket help for households, 2 new tax cuts for every taxpayer, more energy bill relief, increasing wages and reforming non-compete clauses, more bulk billing and cheaper medicines, student debt relief, and a fair go for families at the checkout and for farmers at the farm gate. Speaker, tonight the government is proud to be delivering more tax relief. Every Australian taxpayer will get a tax cut next year and the year after to top up the tax cuts which began in July. This will take the first tax rate down to its lowest level in more than half a century. These additional tax cuts are modest, but they will make a difference. The average earner will have an extra $536 in their pocket each year when they're fully implemented. Combined with our first round of tax cuts, this is $2,190, and the average total tax cut will be $2,548, or about $50 a week. We'll also increase the Medicare levy low-income thresholds, which is extra tax relief for more than 1 million Australians. Now, our $17 billion in tax cuts are the biggest part of the responsible cost of living package in this budget, but they're not the only part. Mr Speaker, electricity prices in the official data went down 25% last year, but they're still putting pressure on households around the world. 2 rounds of energy rebates have helped take some of the sting out of energy costs. Tonight we're providing another $1.8 billion in energy bill relief. Every household and around 1 million small businesses will receive energy rebates until the end of 2025. This means cutting another $150 off bills this year. The government will also be using the powers and penalties of the energy regulators and the ACCC to help ensure that energy companies offer customers cheaper deals, that pensioners receive the discounts that they are entitled to, and that Australians get the value that they deserve. Mr Speaker, at the core of our economic plan and at the very heart of this Labor government is a simple objective: to ensure more Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn. In the 5 quarters before our first budget, real wages fell in annual terms. They have now grown for the last 5. Real incomes per capita are now growing too. This is the dividend of our economic plan to get inflation down and wages up and tax cuts flowing. Tonight we're providing an additional $2.6 billion to fund pay rises for aged care nurses from March this year, so that the workers that we trust to care for our parents and grandparents get paid properly for the work that they do. We're reforming non-compete clauses to lift wages by up to $2,500 a year for workers covered by them. We've supported an historic wage increase for the early childhood educators and care workforce, and we've backed pay rises which ensure the national minimum wage has risen by almost $7,500 a year. Speaker, we know that Australians, despite all of this, are still under pressure, and a lot of that pressure is felt at the checkout. That's why we're cracking down on the supermarkets, by empowering the competition watchdog, making the food and grocery code mandatory, increasing penalties and boosting competition. At the same time, we're targeting excessive surcharging and scams and unfair trading practices that harm consumers. Speaker, a university education is a life-changing opportunity, but it shouldn't leave Australians with a lifetime of debt. This year we will cut 20% off all student loan debts, raise the minimum repayment threshold and reduce repayment rates. Combined with our existing student debt relief, we will slash $19 billion in debt for more than 3 million Australians. Speaker, in every budget, including this one, we have made medicines cheaper. Tonight we reduced the maximum price for a PBS script from $31.60 to $25. And pensioners and concession card holders will still pay $7.70 a script because we froze their costs as well. We're also investing $1.8 billion to list more life-changing and life-saving medicines on the PBS. For example, cutting the cost of a lymphoma treatment will save some Australians more than $600,000. Speaker, the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme is a great Labor creation and it's a great Australian institution. And we are strengthening it because Australians need us to, not weakening it because American multinationals want us to. A Labor government created Medicare as well, and only Labor governments strengthen it. Tonight we are proud to make the single biggest commitment to Medicare since its creation. A record $8.5 billion to lift bulk billing rates and build our health workforce. Because of this investment, 9 out of 10 GP visits should be fully bulk billed by the end of the decade. More bulk billing will mean less pressure on families. These incentives mean there will be around 4,800 fully bulk billing practices around the country, making it easier to see a doctor and get the care that you need, and saving patients around $860 million a year. This budget also delivers new incentives for doctors to train as GPs, new scholarships for nurses and midwives, and another 50 Medicare urgent care clinics. This is a $644 million investment in this budget to build on the 87 urgent care clinics that we've already opened. 4 in every 5 Australians will live within a 20-minute drive of an urgent care clinic as a consequence. Opening early, closing late, available on weekends, taking pressure off hospitals and emergency departments, and all you need is your Medicare card. Every single state and territory will also get more money for hospitals in this budget, funding that will reduce waiting times. Tonight we're locking in an extra $1.8 billion, taking our total contribution to public hospitals to $33.9 billion next year. Speaker, we're proud to be investing $793 million in this budget in women's health to create more choices and lower costs and deliver better health care for women. This funding will help Australian women save on contraception, access more endometriosis and pelvic pain clinics, and receive better support through menopause. Because for our government, women's health is not a boutique issue or a question of special interest. It is a national priority. Yeah. Speaker, new plans for cost of living and health are accompanied by new investments in housing. We are tackling the housing shortage from every responsible angle, making home ownership more affordable for young Australians and for young families in particular. Our $33 billion plan will help build 1.2 million new homes before the decade is out. This includes $54 million to accelerate the uptake of modern methods of housing construction, which is all about building more homes more quickly. It supports our work to cut red tape and reduce financial barriers to more efficient construction methods. The first two rounds of the $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund are helping to build about 18,000 social and affordable homes for those who need them most. And lifting the cap on Housing Australia's financial liabilities to $26 billion also helps in this regard. We're making sure new properties are well located and connected to the infrastructure that they require. Our housing support program is funding the crucial roads, water and power that these new homes need. Our national leadership is incentivising states and territories to reform their planning systems to accelerate new housing supply. And to build more, we know that we also need to train more builders. That's why we're attracting more apprentices into the housing industry by doubling incentive payments so that eligible apprentices get up to $10,000 if they train up in the housing construction sector. Speaker, tonight we're expanding our Help to Buy scheme as well. This is part of our efforts to help ensure more Australians can buy a place of their own. We will update the property price and income caps so more first home buyers are eligible for the scheme. And this will help 40,000 Australians buy their first home in the next 4 years. And the changes mean that they can access a bigger range of homes and buy one that suits them. And we're easing pressure on the housing market by banning foreign investors from buying established homes and cracking down on foreign land banking as well. Speaker, a crucial part of this Labor government's economic plan relies on the transformational power of education, its power to turn aspiration and ambition into reality. And this is why we're investing in every stage of education, to lay the foundation for a better and fairer system and teach and train Australians for the jobs of the future. Speaker, this all starts with early childhood education and care. We believe every child has the right to an early education to ensure that they don't start school behind. Cheaper childcare is also cost of living relief with an economic dividend. A key part of our plan to rebuild living standards is to help people work more and earn more if they want to. That means breaking down the barriers to workforce participation. So from January 2026, we are replacing the childcare subsidy activity test with a new 3-day guarantee. This will make sure families are entitled to at least 3 days a week of subsidised early childhood education and care. We're also building more childcare centres in areas of need, investing $5 billion to expand access across the country and lift the wages of early educators, and charting a path to universal early education and care regardless of a child's background or no matter where they live. Speaker, we're also putting billions into public schools in this budget to open the doors of opportunity for more Australian children. We're fully and fairly funding public schools to help students catch up, keep up and finish school. This means public schools will finally be on track to reach the funding standard recommended in the Gonski Review almost 15 years ago. Yeah. On top of this, our fee-free TAFE program will help equip Australians for the jobs of the future. Over the next decade, 9 out of 10 new jobs will require post-secondary qualifications. Almost half of these will be from vocational training. We've introduced legislation to lock in 100,000 free TAFE places annually from 2027, and we've committed $1.6 billion to fund these places until 2035 to make it easier for Australians to train, retrain and upskill. Speaker, we see this as an important way, or one way, to ensure Australians can be primary beneficiaries of all of this churn and change that we're seeing around the world. Another is by investing in our comparative advantages, or by looking for opportunities to join with our partners in new, more resilient global supply chains, by becoming an indispensable part of the global net zero economy, by preparing our people to adjust to and succeed in the new world being created right in front of us, by building a future made in Australia. Yeah. Now, a big part of this depends on boosting productivity the right way to lift living standards over the long term. Now, our plan for productivity growth doesn't mean making Australians work longer for less. It's about investing in our people and doing more to unlock our potential by boosting dynamism and competition in our economy. We've created a $900 million fund to reward state governments for implementing reforms that promote competition. And tonight we are advancing this substantial economic reform agenda. We will abolish non-compete clauses for most Australian workers. Non-competes are holding too many Australians back from switching to better, higher-paying jobs. More than 3 million Australians are captured by these clauses, including childcare workers, construction workers and hairdressers. People shouldn't need to hire a lawyer to take the next step in their career, or permission from their old boss if they want to be their own boss and turn an idea into a small business. The Productivity Commission estimates that this reform could lift productivity, reduce inflation and improve GDP by $5 billion. And it could boost wages by up to 4%. We're also introducing a national licensing scheme to allow electricians to work seamlessly across borders. This will be a template for expanding national licensing to other occupations when and where we can. The PC suggests these broader licensing reforms could boost GDP by up to $10.3 billion. Mr Speaker, Australia is well placed to respond to the 5 seismic challenges shaping this new world of uncertainty. The shift from globalisation to fragmentation, from hydrocarbons to renewables, from information technology to AI, from a younger population to an older one, and all of the changes in our industrial base. Now, all of this puts a premium on resilience, and that's what a future made in Australia is all about. In this budget, we're investing more than $3 billion to support the production of Australian-made green metals like aluminium and iron, building on the tax incentives for critical minerals and green hydrogen that we legislated last year. We're also backing clean technologies through our Future Made in Australia Innovation Fund and by recapitalising the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. This will help develop new industries in clean energy manufacturing, green metals and low-carbon liquid fuels, and unlock more private investment. This agenda is about recognising that our future growth prospects lie at the intersection of our industrial, resources, skills and energy bases and our attractiveness as an investment destination, so that we can grasp the jobs and opportunities of the net zero transformation. Speaker, in difficult conditions, around 25,000 new businesses have been created each month on average since we came to office. Now, we respect and admire the hard work and aspiration and sacrifice behind those record numbers, which is why we're going into bat for small and local businesses in this budget, protecting them from unfair trading practices, funding our Buy Australian campaign to support local producers, providing new resources for the regulator to level the playing field for smaller players, and delivering tax relief for hospitality venues, brewers, distillers and wine producers as well. Speaker, building Australia's future also means building on the strength of our regions. That's why we're securing banking services in country towns and flights in the bush. It's also why we're investing up to $3 billion in additional equity to complete the rollout of the national broadband network. Infrastructure like the NBN is essential for communities and students and businesses and to the productivity of our nation. And so are the roads and railways connecting our regions to our cities and supporting economic growth. This budget provides $17.1 billion over 10 years for these projects, including $7.2 billion to upgrade the Bruce Highway in Queensland, the biggest ever investment in the Bruce, $2.3 billion for Western Sydney, with $1 billion of that for the rail network alone, and $2 billion towards transforming Sunshine Station, taking our Melbourne Airport rail investments to $7 billion. In total, we're investing more than $120 billion in infrastructure in every state and territory over the decade, improving the productivity, resilience, livability and sustainability of our cities, regions and communities, accompanied by $262 million to preserve and conserve our natural land and our ocean assets. Speaker, in these uncertain times, economic security and national security are increasingly intertwined. We're supporting stability and prosperity in our region by helping to shore up banking services in the Pacific. We've invested an extra $50 billion in defence by the mid-2030s to help keep Australians safe. It means defence funding will grow beyond 2.3% of GDP by the early 2030s. And we're investing $45 million in our initial response to the independent intelligence review. So, Mr Speaker, in a tight budget, we've made room to boost our defences, strengthen Medicare, help people doing it tough, build more homes and invest in the future. We've done all of this at the same time as we've overseen the biggest ever fiscal improvement in a single term of government. Tonight's budget is $207 billion better than we inherited. It's in better shape in every year over the forward estimates than it was 3 years ago. In our first 2 years, we posted the first back-to-back surpluses in nearly 2 decades. Our deficit this year has almost halved since we came to office. Next year's deficit is $42 billion, lower than what was forecast at the last election and lower than at the mid-year update. Gross debt will hit $940 billion this financial year, $177 billion lower than what we inherited. This means we'll avoid around $60 billion in interest costs over the decade. These are some of the dividends of our responsible economic management, achieved through a combination of spending restraint, finding savings and banking revenue upgrades. Real payments growth is forecast to average 1.7% to 28-29, less than half of the average under our predecessors. We've found around $94 billion of savings since coming to government, including another $2 billion in this budget. In this term, we've banked around 70% of tax receipt upgrades, and we've made structural improvements to the budget across the NDIS, aged care and interest costs as well. And Speaker, we're repairing the budget without ignoring our responsibility to build a stronger, fairer and more inclusive society, where more Australians have the chance to contribute and share in our economic success. We're providing $1.3 billion for closing the gap and economic self-determination for First Nations Australians, with investments in remote community services, opportunities for business and support for home ownership. Tonight's budget also includes $424 million for Australians with a disability and more funding for aged care reform. There's more money to support veterans and build on the progress that we have made eliminating that backlog of claims. And we're providing help to Australians and communities affected by natural disasters, provisioning another $1.2 billion to properly fund recovery from ex-tropical cyclone Alfred, as part of $13.5 billion in natural disaster funding for further north and right around the country. So, Mr Speaker, it's even more important and even more remarkable that Australia's economy is turning the corner, when we know that the global economy is taking a turn for the worse. Our progress and our prospects validate and vindicate the decisions and the sacrifices that we've made together as Australians to bring inflation and debt down, to get wages and growth up, and to keep unemployment low. And what really matters is that we build on this platform, how we help finish the fight against inflation, how we keep rebuilding living standards, and how we maximise our national advantages to benefit Middle Australia. The plan at the core of this budget is about more than putting the worst behind us. It's about seizing the best of what's ahead of us, to build a stronger economy together and to build a future that we can all be proud of. And that's why I commend this bill and this budget to the House.
Oh, yes. Pat ourselves on the back. Well done, everyone. Well done. Get a load of this, Shaquille. Notice how the people behind him, it was obviously Albo, Tony Burke, Minister for Immigration, and then 4 women. Because both parties, it just came out this week, both parties are actually struggling.
That was the Treasurer Jim Chalmers delivering his 4th budget. Hello, I'm Sarah Ferguson and welcome to this special edition.
All right, sorry Sarah, we're going away. So that was really interesting because what we saw a situation where he basically started off, and again guys, optics are everything. He basically started off with all these excuses saying, look, this is the context. Ukraine war in the Middle East, it just come out of a pandemic, trade war, you know, Donald Trump's come in, so it's like a meteor is about to hit. And it almost felt like it was a caveat. It's like, yeah, look, I didn't do all the homework because all of this, but with that said, this is what we did, basically. I just felt that sort of vibe. I don't know what you felt about the opening tone.
I'm going to upset our audience.
Yeah, shoot.
I love our. When I say our audience, your audience.
No, sure.
Yeah, I've got to say, I think I don't agree. Everyone knows I'm not going to vote for the Labor Party this election. I've never voted for the Labor Party in my life. I'm not saying I never would, but I just never have. And I'm not so persuaded now that I'm going to. I thought overall that was actually a pretty good speech. My issue is that they're talking about I'm going to make an investment into this, and we're going to do this. You're spending all this money. Where is it coming from? Right? And it was a little bit like the carbon tax under Julia Gillard, where it was, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put a carbon tax on, but then we're going to give you a subsidy or a payment that'll make up for the carbon tax. Well, then how about you just don't charge for the carbon tax then?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I'm not... I personally, I thought that was a good... It was a good speech. Yeah. I think so. I think it did sound, as it would, because it's one-sided, so you don't have any opposition people to say anything about it. It sounded invigorating. He talked about a lot of things, the unemployment rate being lower and, the debt being lower and all these different things. But we were coming out of COVID. So, of course, we're going to have those improvements.
Two surpluses, it's like, for God's sake,
Exactly.
Yeah.
There were some things that I thought was great. An increase to... And for those people that have viewed me on this show and other podcasts might find this surprising, I thought it was great that he was talking about increase in funding to women's healthcare. Right? I think that women obviously have different bodies to men, unless you're a Labor Party supporter, in which case we're all the same. They have different health issues. Different things that happen, when they're pregnant, and different things that happen once a month, and all these other issues. So an increase to healthcare, I thought, was fantastic.
Yeah, devil's in the detail, isn't it? It's got to be said.
And that's what we have to...
It's just like, they're like, oh yeah, we're more money for women's healthcare, but it's like, that demeans young boys that want to become women. You know.
Well, exactly, and that's what we have to look at.
And that's what when I invited you on last minute for this, I said, look, unless you read the 800-page document and check the detail. Yeah. And even if the details not, is in there, it might not even be what we end up getting.
Yeah,
we really have to follow up on these things. But don't let me.
Well, I'm looking. I've been trying to use Copilot, ChatGPT to get through. Some of the, because it's a big document, right? So I'm not going to be able to do that live. I'm not sure which camera I'm supposed to be on. But I can't do that live, obviously. But. Like things like that, they sound really good. They do. They sound really good. And oftentimes when the Labor Party talks, what they say sounds good. The NDIS, under Julia Gillard, sound like a good idea, right? Let's support Australians that have disabilities, that have issues, that need that extra funding. That sounds great. What's happened though? What's happened is we've seen enormous corruption and enormous profiteering, and those very same people that we were trying to help, not getting the help. Now, most Australians, on the right, on the left, wherever, most Australians want to help their fellow Australian. We rely on government to do that. I think the main thing that I will say about this budget is he focused a lot, Jim Chalmers, he focused a lot on issues that I think people care about, right? He talked about making it easier for Australians to buy homes. He talked about making it easier for 40,000 Australians to buy homes. But what's that immigration rate been?
Yeah.
Right? So we can't... Okay, you get 40,000 people buying homes. What about the 500,000 people that have come into the country?
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And when you say Australians, are you talking about somebody who just rocked up 5 minutes ago, or are you talking about somebody who was born here and, has lived their life there? I think the major issue is it always sounds good when you want to spend money, right? Spending money is great, right? Let's give every Australian a bottle of Grange. Sounds fantastic, right?
Yeah, you get an
But where's the money coming from?
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's where they got it wrong. But the major thing that I'll take away from this, and I have to be, I'm so angry at you, Joel. I am so angry at you because you've predicted that it'll be a Labor, that Labor will win the next election, and the closer we get, the more likely it is, I think, that you're correct. I hope you're wrong.
Me too.
Me too. But the Liberal Party really haven't pushed back enough. And the major issue that I take away from the Labor Party's comments today is if these things really were so important to you, why didn't you talk about them from day one? As I've said before, I've never voted for the Labor Party. But I've always said that doesn't mean I never would. If the Labor Party focused on all the issues that Jim Chalmers just talked about, and they'd focus on that from the moment they beat ScoMo, I might be sitting here and saying, you know what? They've earned my vote. That they deserve it.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They focused on race. They focused on the voice. They focused on all these other issues. Within the last couple of weeks, there's been Chinese naval vessels that have come between Australia and New Zealand, which meant that Virgin flights, I believe Qantas as well, but I'm aware of Virgin flights on news.com.au, only became aware of their testing as they were in the air. Now, I'm not accusing China of threatening us, but it's an issue. Where's the media coverage on that? Where's the media coverage? He talks about, we're going to, provide more banking services to people in the Pacific regions. I've just spent a month arguing with the banks, just trying to get a transfer done, as you're aware, and some of my business partners are aware, right?
Yeah.
I've had to talk to bank compliance officers and et cetera, et cetera. What are you talking about? You're going to provide banking services to people in the South Pacific?
In Australia, we can't get Aussie businesses, moving.
So those people in the Pacific countries, they're using cash.
Yeah.
They're fine. Leave them alone.
No,
right?
Literally.
So, as I said, I can totally understand why that would be a reasonably uplifting message. I think that it sounded quite like, yeah, cool, excellent. But I think when you drill down into the details...
Yeah, how are you going to pay for it?
How are you going to pay for it? Where's it coming from? And if these really are the things that you care about, why haven't you been doing that since you won the...
Oh, literally.
Won the government for ScoMo?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when Kamala started running and she was still the vice president. And it was like, I'm going to do this if I get elected, and then I'm going to do that. It's like, well, why don't you do it now? You've still got time, If you look at this tweet, I think this pretty much summarizes the budget. Just free stuff, essentially. Free GP appointments, free TAFE, even cheaper medicines, cut 20% off the student debt, HEX, $150 off power bills, and getting more Australians into their own home. Cost of living help remains our number one focus, and Australians can expect to see more in tonight's budget. And that's the real problem about this whole thing. As you say, it's a massive cash splurge. How do you pay for the damn thing? I mean, don't get me wrong, they've been a bit more fiscally responsible on certain aspects like Bill Shorten and the NDIS and cutting all that wastage that was there, but it's still massive. It's still huge. There's not a massive enough reduction that we're going to see lower taxes. That's for sure. You'll barely notice it. They just sort of, okay, we'll cut this, but we're going to add that. And that's the problem. We will.
I think these politicians they come up with policies that sound good to each other, that sound good to perhaps the Australian press corps, but they don't sound very good to the everyday Australian. Like, okay, what did he say? It's $50 a week. You're going to save on taxes. I'm not trying to say that $2,500 a year is nothing, but like, this is not going to mean very much. It's not going to result, I think, in that many people feeling as though they've had a better quality of life.
No.
And it really does feel like the Labor Party is out of touch with what Australians want, what Australians need. And I'll withhold my comments until Thursday when Peter Dutton responds. But I personally feel that the Liberal Party is to blame, actually. Because if the Liberal Party came up with some sensible policies and actually fought back instead of just pretty much going along in order to get along with the Labor Party and the Greens, maybe we'd have an alternative.
Yeah.
But we just don't. John Howard and Paul Keating had wildly different views. John Hewson and Paul Keating had wildly different views. John Hewson was unable to explain to the Australian people how what he wanted to do in relation to changing taxes, etc., was going to work. And he lost the election. John Howard came along. He managed to persuade the Australian people, and he managed to be the second longest serving Prime Minister of Australia. We need somebody like that in the Liberal Party today, who is actually going to come back and fight back against some of this stuff, because otherwise, what's going to go out on tomorrow's press is all of these things that sound fantastic. Free TAFE. We're going to increase Medicare.
Yeah.
We're going to do all these things, Yeah, but you're spending money that we may not have.
That's right. I'm just looking over at some of the more comments. Jim Chalmers, I think, he's hopped on with the ABC, which definitely sounds fitting, the most friendly place for him. So he's just currently talking to one of the speakers there. I'm not sure if this is a new interview or if it was done earlier today, but check this out.
And tells us what it says it will do.
There are two overarching narratives in the Treasurer's presentation today. One is about Australia's economy turning a corner. The other is the threats to the economy from the global disorder. They both exist within the urgent demands of a federal election. The Treasurer joins me now.
that off
Welcome,
as
Treasurer,
fact.
and
Thanks very
congratulations
much.
on your highly unusual
Global
fourth
disorder.
budget.
I appreciate it, Sarah. Thanks.
Now, budgets, as we know, are about choices. You've chosen to give every Australian worker a tax cut, spending $17 billion, as we've heard. Why are you giving a tax cut to you and to me?
Well, this is about topping up a tax cut for every Australian taxpayer, in addition to the tax cuts which are already rolling out from July last year. And so we know that they're modest in isolation, but we think meaningful in combination with all of the tax cuts that we've provided and the other cost of living help that we are rolling out. Now, when it comes to the design of the tax cuts, in order to give a tax cut for every Australian taxpayer, the benefits are felt disproportionately to people we are encouraging into work. Younger workers, women, people on lower and middle incomes, they will proportionately be the biggest beneficiaries of these topped-up tax cuts, in addition to the tax cuts already rolling out.
Topped-up tax cuts, but they're still political. Have you stolen Peter Dutton's thunder here?
Well, I see these tax cuts in economic terms, and it's partly in recognition that even as we make this really quite remarkable progress together as Australians in the fight against inflation, we know that people are still under pressure. And so we're providing cost of living relief. Really one of the defining features of this budget is the cost of living relief that we're providing. Often the best way to do that is through the tax system. So we see it in terms of cost of living. We see it in terms of the economic benefits to participation. We found room in a pretty tight budget to provide these tax cuts. The politics will take care of themselves.
Are they fiscally responsible, though, in the environment we have?
Yes, they are. And you know, there's an appetite, obviously, and an enthusiasm often to provide bigger tax cuts. We have to provide the tax cuts we think the budget can afford, and we have to do that in the most responsible way. And that's what's guided us here, to give as much cost of living help as we can in the most responsible way, conscious of the pressures on the budget and also the pressures coming at us from around the world.
So put another way, the political advantage of the tax cuts, whether you don't want to engage, whether you want to engage with that or not, outweighs the impact on the budget.
Well, I think that's for others to determine. You know, I genuinely
but
believe...
I'm here asking you.
Well, I genuinely believe that if you get the big economic decisions right, and we have overwhelmingly done that in the course of the last 3 years, I genuinely believe the politics will take care of themselves. Obviously, I'm not oblivious to the fact that this budget, this fourth budget, a very rare and cherished opportunity, is being delivered on the eve of an election, and it will set up a choice between Labor helping with the cost of living and Peter Dutton, whose secret cuts will make Australians worse off.
Just a question, have you ruled out an inflationary impact of these tax cuts that the RBA would be looking at?
Well, a couple of things about that. I mean, first of all, obviously, I briefed the Reserve Bank Governor on the budget. I do that for every budget and every budget update. I've done that for the last two Reserve Bank governors, and I'll do that for as long as I'm in this job. I think it's important. So I've done that. Secondly, one of the most encouraging things about this budget...
I briefed the RBA governor. All right, this is very important, all right? I'm going to pause this and I'll make this point. He said we need to help Australians in the fight against inflation by using with cost of living relief.
Yes, let's spend more money.
Yeah, that's why we have inflation. You know, and I'm no economist. And then he goes on to she says, "Look, have you?" And there's a great question from her. Have you actually, are you blinded by the fact that cost of living relief might actually lead to a lot of inflation? And he said, "Well, yes, I've considered that. I briefed the RBA governor," and then he moves on. So that briefing someone doesn't mean it's fine.
He made a comment a little bit earlier. Where he said something along the lines of, we're going to soften the blow to Australians, make things a little bit easier because of how hard things have been. Yeah, like if you're punching me in the face and it's Mike Tyson, and then you get the Year 7 girl to punch me in the face, I'm still getting punched in the face. It just doesn't hurt as much, right? Like seriously, like you've hurt us. You've hurt the everyday Australian person.
Yeah.
And again, I'll be slightly repetitive. This is the Liberal Party's fault.
Yeah.
Because the Liberal Party should be sitting there opposing some of this stuff, coming out with sensible alternatives that we can actually vote for. And they're not doing it.
No.
And that's probably why you're going to be correct.
Yeah.
And what we end up with is a Labor Party that is going to, like all Labor parties do, not just here, in the UK, same thing. The Democrats in the US that think that let's just spend more money and that'll make things easier. It doesn't.
No.
It hurts us in the end.
No, it's the whole debate about the Keynesianism and, can we spend our way out of this hole, basically. Let's go back to his comments and see what else he says before I interrupted.
Is that Treasury's actually brought forward its expectations for when inflation gets sustainably in the target band. And so we've provided this cost of living relief in a responsible way, consistent with inflation lower and earlier, which is one of our key economic objectives.
But what about that specific question around whether or not there is an inflationary impact of these new tax cuts?
Well, we don't believe there is, for a couple of reasons. One, the timing. Secondly, there's a participation effect here. We're encouraging more people into the workforce, which is, one of our key objectives. But thirdly, we think we've got the magnitude right to provide some topped-up tax relief to every Australian taxpayer, but in the most responsible way we can.
Now, it is, as we are saying, of course, a pre-election measure that sits alongside the, I think, around $35 billion in pre-election announcements that you've made since January. How are you going to pay for all of those promises with these tax cuts now sitting on top?
Well, first of all, a large number of those commitments that we've announced over the course of the last few months were already provisioned for in the mid-year budget update. And
Some were, not all, yeah.
Well, most of them were before tonight. The big mover, obviously, tonight has been the tax cuts. So if you think about the net policy decisions in the budget, about $35 billion, that is less than what our predecessors committed in their election budget, point number one. Point number two, half of that is the tax cuts, $17 billion in tax cuts. And point number three is $8 billion of that $35 billion was already in the MyEFO.
Now, you were fortunate in your previous budgets with record windfalls, obviously, especially from the mining exports, enabling you to post surpluses. So is what we are seeing now the true picture of your economic management with its unending long-term deficits?
No,
Well,
it's not. It's a lie.
Let's see what he says. Give the man a chance.
Give him a
But that was what a great question, though, from it. That was brilliant.
Inception.
Well, they might get the funding cut if they keep on like this.
Well, like, who knows? Maybe she's just, hedging her bets.
The recovery in the budget was driven entirely by commodity prices.
I said largely, also tax receipts, but largely by very large.
Commodity prices.
Mate, she's a pit bull. I like it.
This has played a welcome and significant role, as did the strength in the labour market. One of the things we should be proudest of as Australians is that we've got inflation down without seeing a spike in unemployment, and that's had benefits for the budget as well.
That's because of how many people left the employment market, Jim Chalmers. Come on now.
All the employment's coming from the public sector. It's like something like 7 or 8 jobs, the new jobs created with the public sector.
About that. But what matters is when you get those revenue upgrades, what you do with them. And we unusually banked most of those revenue upgrades, without which there wouldn't have been a surplus or a second surplus for the first time in almost 2 decades. Our predecessors spent most of those upgrades. We banked most of them, and that's why we had 2 surpluses.
I think what we're talking about now are the deficits into the future, not what your predecessors did. Let me put it to you in a different way. So over the term of this government, you've overseen the largest spending as a share of the economy since the mid-1980s, outside of crisis, of course. Who is going to pay for all of those commitments into the future?
Well, first of all, during COVID, for understandable reasons, spending as a share of the economy was about a third of the economy.
The Australian people are going to pay for it, right?
We're all the way down below a quarter of the economy, and it's settling a little bit higher than that, largely because of our responsibilities in the care economy and some of those unavoidable...
Wait, I've never heard that before. The care economy. Like, they just really are quite experts at branding crap, aren't they? We can't cut the care economy.
Look, I think I will say, and I think our audience, you've got to give credit where credit is due, right? The Labor Party is currently trying to say that they are the party of tax cuts and reduced government spending while they've released a budget.
Yeah.
Which is going to spend all this money.
Yeah.
I love it.
And she's just
Brilliant.
like, this is the highest spending bill per capita since the 80s.
Yeah, brilliant.
Oh, God.
Investments that we're making as a
investments,
government. So
mate.
spending as a share of the economy is settling around the kind of 26s. It was up in the 31s, it got down to the 24s, and now it's settling slightly higher than that. And in every budget, whether it's the $94 billion in savings that we've found, the way we've banked upward revisions to revenue...
Hang on. 94 billion in savings.
Well, they found it. Right. It was missing. Like, what can we do? Yeah. Oh, let's trust the Labor Party. Oh, they found the 94 billion. But yet they'll oppose... So in the US, we have Elon Musk, which... I criticise my own side. I'll criticise my own side. I'm a little bit concerned about Elon Musk's involvement and influence over the US government and the presidency. I'm a little bit concerned about Doge and big balls and, all the other things that have been going on over there. And I think that some of the cuts that they've made perhaps have gone too far.
Right.
But please don't sit there and tell me that the Labor Party are the ones that have found a $94 billion savings. There was a $94 billion, let's call it 100. There's $100 billion worth of savings that could have been made, and Conservative governments couldn't find it. But bring on Great Labor, and Great Labor found it. Oh, come on.
Of all people.
Please.
But look, there were certainly cuts they found in the, what's it called, NDIS and a few other places, which was good to see.
Yeah, but under immense pressure from the Liberal Party, the National Party, many of the independent parties like One Nation, Family First, etc., the Freedom Parties, right? The Freedom Parties need to get their act together because they're the ones that are actually showing some of these inefficiencies. They're the ones that are annoyed about this. And if they can organise themselves properly, perhaps we'd actually get proper change in this country.
I was talking to someone the other day. They were saying that the Liberal Party and the Nationals, on the topic of the NDIS, it's almost like they've vacated the field. They never talk about it. They never talk about the fiscal responsibility of it. And it's literally gotten to the point where Labor has begrudgingly or, proactively done it. And it's like, why? I reckon that was a huge vote winner to be like, no, it's not about cuts. It's about efficiency. And we want to make sure it's going to not scam artists, but actual, the people that need it.
The big thing with this today, with either his interview or if we go back to the speech he gave to Parliament today, like objectively, it sounds invigorating. It does.
Yeah, no, it was a very positive message. I mean, in terms of delivery, the guy, even in this interview, he's getting scolded. Right. But
he's handling himself, right? Now, I like Peter Dutton. I've never met Jim Chalmers. Albo, I don't know, I mentioned it to you when the microphones are off. Albo looks bloody miserable.
Oh, behind, yeah.
I've never met Tony Burke, but he I don't know, he just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know. But maybe if I met him, he's a nice guy, we'll have a beer and, everything's fine.
Yeah.
But, like, what are the Liberals gonna do? What's Peter Dutton going to come out and say? What's Susan Ley going to come out and say? Right? Let's put Jacinta Price in front of, in charge of the Australian Doge.
Yeah, that's what he's doing.
They want to do that for Indigenous affairs. Why don't they say, you know what, we want to have a look at all government spending and find out where the inefficiencies are and find out where our money's actually going, right? Australians deserve better than what we've got. And I'm not just talking about, look, okay, so I'm in the middle class or upper middle class or whatever you want to call me, right? It's not just about people like myself. I've mentioned this on previous shows. We have older people that are going to nursing homes that don't have enough money after they pay their nursing home fees for continence pads. That we've got people that are waiting 15 and 20 years to get into community housing that are told, well, oh, you've got a cat. Well, you're not allowed to have a cat if you move into this house, so you've got to give up your cat. They don't want to give up the cat because it's the only companionship they've got, and so they get pushed back to the back of the list. We've got people from the grand old ABC of all places who reported that there were people that were skipping meals so they could feed their pets, right? Forget about parents, skipping meals to feed their kids. These are things that are serious issues that people on the right care about and people on the left care about. And what we have, in my personal opinion, is dysfunctional parliament. And it's not just the Labor Party, it's the Libs and it's the Nats. They've let us down.
Let's see what else she gets out of him in this interview, because I'm liking the direction that it's going.
Constraint when it comes to real spending growth being half the pace of the 30-year average. All of that comes together to make room for our commitments, whether it's strengthening Medicare, providing cost of living help, or investing in the future. Should
we just give the audience the numbers again for what's going to happen to the deficit? $42 billion next year, 35.7 the year after. It's $179.5 billion. We're not talking about banking surpluses. We're talking about what you're going to do to attack that structural position of the budget.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the budget position cumulatively is $207 billion stronger than when we came to office. Okay, and that shouldn't be lightly dismissed. That's actually the biggest positive turnaround in any budget in a single parliamentary term ever, in nominal terms. That's the first point. Very, very important point, often neglected. Secondly, this year's deficit is almost half as big as what it was when we came to office. Thirdly, if you look at the overall position, the bottom lines in...
What she mentioned earlier was perfect. She said those first two budgets were mainly due to the minerals sales and the price of critical minerals.
This budget, it is stronger than what it was only a few months ago in the mid-year budget update. And so we're chipping away. And we're also making sure we make a structural difference to the budget in the NDIS aged care and interest costs.
Yes, actually, let me just ask you about NDIS, because on that particular measure, as you said, it's been a huge pressure on the budget. Yeah. Can you confirm that it's going to hit its reduced target for growth of 8% next year?
Yeah, we're on track for that for sure. We're seeing some very encouraging progress. And the thing that we're encouraged by is that we've been able to get the costs of the NDIS to a more sustainable growth rate, still growing quite quickly, but more sustainably, while we still meet our responsibilities to people who need and deserve the scheme.
Now, there's one other measure that people are talking about today I want to ask you about briefly, and that is the extraordinary increase in the, drop in the tobacco excise. This is a situation where the tax has caused enormous profit to bikies and criminals, a failed policy. How do you fix it?
Well, there's two ways that we get tobacco excise down. One's a good way and one's a bad way. The good way is more people give up the darts. That's a good thing.
Yep.
The bad way is more people
Don't
avoid the
tell
excise,
me what to
and
do.
there is a problem. I think we've spoken about this maybe at this set on other occasions. So we're investing more money in enforcement and compliance because we recognise there's a problem here, and we need to collect more of this excise because we've got a problem in people avoiding it.
Let me just let's just talk about how the politics of the big decisions in tonight's budget are going to play out politically. Yeah, obviously, we are in the teeth of an election. I think the opposition has responded to your tax cuts. They're calling them a cruel tax hoax. Now, what does that tell you about
politics?
How these tax cuts are going to be received? There's strong language coming out from the opposition straight away. Is that because you stole Peter Dutton's thunder, or are we looking at a tax hoax?
Well, that's the first I've heard of it. Sounds like they're not supporting our tax cuts, and that's what happened last time we tried to give every Australian taxpayer a tax cut. They didn't support that either. Peter Dutton was so angry about that, he said we should call an election to prevent those tax cuts flowing into the pockets of every Australian taxpayer.
Isn't he entitled to have a legitimate concern about you piling a tax cut on top of already a budget suffering from a structural deficit whose numbers are eye-watering?
No, we've done this in a very responsible way. We're providing tax relief to every Australian taxpayer. If he doesn't support that, he should say so. If he's got alternatives, if he's got alternatives, he should come clean. And they've had 3 years now, and they still haven't come up or come clean on any costed or credible or coherent economic policies. Angus Taylor's colleagues don't take him seriously. It is an absolute bin fire of incompetence and inconsistency. And what it means is, and as he told your colleague David Spears, Peter Dutton says there'll be hundreds of billions of dollars of cuts. They've got to find $600 billion to pay for nuclear reactors. They can't do that without coming after Medicare. That's why they're not coming clean on their cuts. And this week, they need to come clean on their cuts because these secret cuts that Peter Dutton has in mind for Australians will make people worse off.
That's a slogan, and I think what the audience wants to understand is how you intend to put policies in place that change the dynamics of the economy that we've heard people talking about all week. That is, we are relying on tax revenue. Right now, you've given you and me $5 or $10 in our pockets, but going forward, who else is going to pay for all of these promises you've made if it's not the taxpayer?
Well, the reason I think that's an unusual question tonight, Sarah, is I've just laid out in lots of detail the government's economic plan to help people with the cost of living, strengthen Medicare and make ourselves more resilient in the face of all of this global economic uncertainty. And all we ask is that 3 years into a 3-year parliamentary term that the opposition does the same thing, to come clean on their cuts and how much worse people will be off as a consequence.
Now, I want to talk about the global uncertainty because during the next 3-year term, if you get another term, if re-elected, you could face an inflationary global trade war with the US, ongoing demands over Ukraine, and a worsening security situation with China. With all of that uncertainty, would it have been more prudent to tighten the budget now to increase the capacity to respond to crisis?
Well, there is a dark shadow from all of this global economic uncertainty over the world's economy and over our own economy and our budget. We're very upfront about that in the budget papers and in my budget speech tonight. We do think that there is substantial risk that these escalating trade tensions mean more inflation and less growth around the world, and we wouldn't be immune from that, but we wouldn't be uniquely impacted.
How concerned
either.
are you personally about that? About the situation, about the impact on Australia?
Very concerned.
Can we just pause this for a second? If we're concerned, or if anybody's concerned about this so-called trade war the US has with everybody, firstly, years ago, including under John Howard, we should have strengthened our trade with the United States, right? It's our closest ally. We should have done that. We didn't. Fine. Okay. If it is the case, as is proclaimed by the left, that Donald Trump is going to have this horrible effect on the world economy because he's going to take the US down an isolationist path. I don't believe that's the case, but leave that aside. Let's say it is the case. There's, 200 countries, 210 countries in the world, right? Why don't we increase trade with those? Especially, why don't we increase trade with the Pacific Island nations that are like right next door to us?
Yeah.
Right? Why aren't we doing that?
Yeah.
Right? So
ridiculous. It's a big world. There's a lot of markets.
Exactly. So we shouldn't be so reliant on any one country. And when China slowed down their trade with us, and look, we won't get into China's politics. China has an economy like everybody else does.
Yeah.
Right? Their economy ebbs and flows. What are we going to do? That every time that China slows down, we slow down? We should have a more robust international trade policy. And we don't. And we've got allies that we're not trading with very much. This is ridiculous what he's talking about.
No, it really is. And you know what's really interesting about this? I was just looking at some of these MPs out there and seeing how they're actually selling this to their constituents. And Andrew Charlton, my member for Parramatta, it was really fascinating seeing how he's actually selling it. So often, guys, when it comes to elections, and you know this, Shaquille, especially from American politics, the way that parties stay in power is they promise things to certain seats that they need to win in the next election, so that they actually are able to ensure they win those seats again. And so Andrew Charlton just tonight actually came out with some screenshots on basically what's going on with. Wow, why is it so hard to find Andrew Charlton's Instagram? Dr. Andrew Charlton, that's why. He come out with some images which are what Western Sydney, especially Parramatta, are getting out of this a budget. And I thought it was quite interesting.
While you're looking that up,
yeah.
So I live in Camden. I live overseas, but the house that I stay at when I'm here is in Camden, which is in the electorate of Macarthur. The MP that won that seat is Dr. Michael Freelander, I believe is his name. I met him once, met his son a couple of times at polling booths. I think he's a great guy. I really do. I've never voted for him, but I actually want him to be in Parliament because I think he's a really good guy. I think he's a great member of that community. The issue that I have is I can't vote for you because if everybody in our area says we want A, but centralised power from the Labor Party says no, we want B, you can't cross the floor. So I'm not voting for you, am I? I'm voting for whoever's going to run, and I don't know exactly who that person's going to be. So to me, that's an issue. But more importantly, when it comes to what we're talking about tonight, everything that they've said sounds good, right? But it's like being on a Tinder profile and telling everybody that you're the most magnificent guy that ever lived, right? Or catfishing somebody.
Yeah. It's like, how much of this can I believe?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like the Labor Party is doing. The Labor Party is catfishing Australians right now. Yeah. They're promising stuff that they haven't delivered on in the past. Okay?
Yeah.
They've been in power. They've put all of their focus on things that are unpopular, that most Australians don't want, even people on the left don't want, right? And they've insisted on it and just by brute force try to push these things through, right? And in my opinion, they don't deserve to be in government anymore. You're probably right with your analysis, Joel, that they'll probably form government again, maybe a minority government, but they don't deserve it.
Yeah, $275 off your bills.
The major issue is not the Labor Party. I'll hold back my criticism of the Labor Party because everyone knows I'm not a Labor Party supporter. The issue is with the Liberals and Nats, because they're the ones that have let us down. They're the ones that don't have a viable alternative that we can sit there and go, yep, that's where we're going.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And that's the problem.
And that's the thing, the two parties are so entrenched right now. But no, I mean, where's the $275 they promised off your electricity bills? So this budget, they're promising now $150 off the energy bills, and they don't have to deliver on that until after you've decided whether they, you should elect them again. But this is what Andrew Charlton's put out. He's my member for Parramatta. Believe it or not, he's actually a pro-nuclear member of Parliament. So he actually went and said, all right, look, this is basically what is coming out of the... what is basically coming out of the budget for Western Sydney. Investing in Western Sydney infrastructure, $2.3 billion across Western Sydney, 66 new social and affordable apartments in North Parramatta alone, backed by $17.7 million. In Westmead, 400 new build-to-rent homes, $151 million in affordable housing. HEX for young people, 20% off. That's a real doozy, that one. That HEX thing, the 20% is a real doozy, because I know people that have paid off. My cousin, who you've met, has paid off his debt 100%.
Yeah.
And he was very, very happy and proud of that. And because you don't lose, you know that, you don't lose your HEX debt. It's with you forever, even if you go bankrupt. And it keeps getting indexed.
It does end if you die.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Unlike the Americans, we're kind enough that if you die...
Yeah.
Or if you retire, I believe, your HEX debt goes away.
Yeah.
But what are we talking about? What are we studying?
Yeah, no, exactly. Is it useful? And there was that comment in his speech. He said, very soon, 90% of all the jobs that are coming up, it's, we're going to need, they're all going to be higher than a second sort of tertiary education. But the whole HEX thing, it's like, what incentive, now that you've done that, which is one of the first times they've ever done that, what incentive have you given people like me, I've still got a HEX debt, to pay the damn thing off? Like, I mean, seriously, there's a lot of people out there now just thinking, oh, well, I'll just wait another 3 years and I'll forgive another 20%, why should I pay this damn thing off? And so, look, that's another thing. The other things Charlton mentioned is... support for local pubs and breweries, 40 pubs in Parramatta.
Local pubs and breweries. Look, I want to talk about the cigarette tax for a minute.
Yeah.
I shouldn't.
Yeah, shoot.
I should. I'm going to, right? I smoke, right? I'll cover up the label. I smoke. I drink. I like to have a good time. I like to have a play on the pokies. Leave me alone.
Leave me alone.
Leave me alone. I'm not hurting you.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need you to tell me that, hey, like, we're doing this for your good, right? You're not my parent, okay? You tell me to sit there and eat my Brussels sprouts, okay? I went to a bar a few nights ago, within the last few nights, lit up a cigarette while I was playing the pokies. Right. Bar staff came over and said, oh, you know you can't smoke in here. Oh, shit, sorry. I didn't realise to put my cigarette out. Now, I'm paying $60 a packet as it is, right? One of the things that I think she talked about was the bikies taking control of the tobacco trade.
Yeah.
What are you expecting?
Yeah.
What are you expecting is going to happen?
Literally.
Right?
It's that expensive.
Study prohibition in the US over alcohol. Study that and see what happened. You want people to pay $70, $80 a pack for a pack of 25s.
Yeah.
Right? Of course they're going to look at alternatives. Right?
Yeah.
Now, again, I know I'm going to upset our audience. Just my view, because I'm not a conservative. I think that drugs should be legalised. I think that the cigarettes and alcohol taxes should be reduced. I think people should be able to do what they want to do. And if you're not going to do that, where's the money going to go? The money's obviously going to go to organised crime. The ABC did a report on the illegal cigarette trade in this country. The reason why that's happening is because your taxes are so high. What do you expect people to do? If a packet of cigarettes is $80 and a person smokes a pack a day, you can sit there and say, oh, well, it's bad for the health, it's this and that. At the end of the day, if they want to smoke, they're going to smoke.
Yeah.
You want them to spend $600 or $700 a week on cigarettes? Of course they're not going to. Of course they're going to look for alternatives, right? So just get your head together and understand that Australians, much like the Brits, much like most of Western Europe, people want to have a punt. They want to. I'm going to paraphrase Stephen Pettith's comments. People like to have a punt, they like to have a smoke, and they like to have a beer.
Yeah.
Leave them alone.
Yeah. Literally.
Leave them alone. And if you're in government, what more would you want? But for the Australian electorate to go, hey, I'm awesome, I'm cool, I'm having a smoke, I'm having me schooner of Tui's old, Tui's new, whatever. I'm having a great time. I've put $50 in the pokies. I'm having a great time. And what's happening in politics, I don't care. Isn't that what you want?
Yeah, literally.
But they're trying to take a bigger and bigger
cut out of it.
Part of our life.
Yeah.
And they're costing us more.
It's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous. Look, let's finish these comments. He's almost done on this. And again, it's ridiculous that obviously, I put the call out to Peter Dutton, the Prime Minister as well, Albo. I put the call out to, Jim Chalmers. They will not come on this show. And so that's why we've literally got to watch the ABC to actually check it out. Even though this show does, very well online, it gets, 1.1 million views a week it averaged last year per show. And I look at this now, I look at what's going on with mainstream media. These are great questions from the ABC, to be clear. I think that she's an absolute pitbull, this lady. I think she's doing a phenomenal job.
Just before you put that back on, they talk about small business. Now, I've had a number of emails, and I've had people that have sent me on your show that have approached me and said, hey, you're talking about going overseas, and you're talking about employing people overseas and how much better life is overseas. You're not very patriotic. Yes, I am patriotic. I love the Australian people, but I just don't love the dickheads that are in charge.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the biggest issue. They talk about trying to improve the economic conditions. What about the small business owner?
Yeah.
What about the bloke who, became an electrician? They talked about making a national electrician license, I'd support that. That sounds great.
Yeah.
But what about that electrician who says, you know what, I'm expanding. I'm going to put 2 guys on, right? Because that way I can take a bit of extra work, right? What about that bloke? What about the plumber, or the brickie who decides that he wants to have a couple of labourers working with him, but he's only got a job for a month. He's only got this job for 3 months. What about those guys, right? They sit there and they say, "Oh yeah, well we're here to support small businesses," right? No, you're not.
Yeah.
Right, and with greatest respect to the Labor Party, you have no idea what's involved in running a small business.
No.
And with the greatest respect to my own party, the Liberals and the Nats, the Coalition, and even to some degree, some freedom parties, not all, but some, you've got no idea. You've got no idea how hard that is.
Yeah.
You've got no idea how you come home from work and you've just done 12 hours, you're sweaty as hell. Let's have a quick shower, take my high-vis gear off, and then I've got to go and do a whole heap of paperwork to comply with government regulations. Right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That's what small businesses have to go through.
Why should they take a risk?
Exactly.
Why should they take a risk? And look, that's part of the comment. I'm going to reserve it till after we listen to this, but part of my comments on this is that he touched on in his speech the construction industry, but I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
Check out his final comments in this interview.
Question. That's why it's so important that we have got the budget in much better condition. It's why it's so important that we're rebuilding incomes and wages and household budgets, and why it's so important that we're investing in a more resilient, more competitive economy. One of the things that's unusual about this budget, being on the eve of an election, is it still has economic reform, abolishing non-compete clauses, a national regime for the electrical trades, and it still has savings. And that's because we recognise the best insurance policy against all this global economic uncertainty is a more resilient economy, stronger incomes and wages for Australians, and a budget in much better nick. We've made progress on all 3 fronts tonight, but there's more work to do.
Where is the room? Where would the money come from if you were compelled, let's say, by circumstances to raise defence spending to 2.5% of GDP?
Yeah, first of all, and I know you're asking a different thing, but first of all, we are dramatically increasing spending on defence, not as far as you just nominated, but it is a quite dramatic increase by historical standards, and we've made the room to do that. A combination of budget repair, and I mentioned the $200 billion improvement, and making room for our priorities. And in a tight budget, the fact that we've made room to help with the cost of living and strengthen Medicare and fund this increase in defence spending, all at the same time as we've got this year's deficit down, I think that augurs well for our ability to continue to make the right economic decisions for the right economic reasons, managing this global economic uncertainty, recognising that people are still under pressure, but more than recognising that, helping people who are doing it tough. When
you delivered your first budget, you said they were hard decisions for hard times, possibly harder times now. Are you going to be able to lay out to the Australian people in this election a plan that encompasses the future, not the situation, not the cost of living crisis you're dealing with now, but a genuine crisis in the Australian budget going forward? We've talked about tax, but a growing deficit up to $42 billion next year. Yeah, I mean, it hits 42 and then it starts to trail away again. It gets back near balance towards the end of the medium term. But I accept the general proposition of your question. There are structural challenges in the budget. We've begun to address those. NDIS, aged care, interest costs, all of those are important ways that we're improving the structural position of the budget. But what I laid out tonight in the government's economic plan and in our 4th budget was a plan to help people in the here and now with the cost of living, but also a plan for the future. Investing in green metals, for example, investing in innovation, making sure that we are an indispensable part of the global net zero transformation. These are our aspirations for the future. We have taken an intergenerational approach to our economic plan, and I've laid that out tonight. Jim Chalmers, thank you very much.
All right. Yeah, I had a few comments I wanted to get through from his in the speech. He was talking about housing, and he's like, well, look, what we're doing to tackle housing. We're committing to 1.1 million new homes in the next 5 years, basically, by 2030. We're using modern construction methods. I don't know what the hell that means, but I don't trust it. We're also going to train more builders. There are plenty of builders. The problem is they're going under. They're young, they're medium age, and they're old. These are experienced people. The builder I worked for You will not meet a more efficient builder without compromising quality and safety standards in Sydney. He went under a couple of years ago, not long after I lost my job with him. And if those people are going under, it doesn't matter how many builders you train. If the experienced hands are going down, you're stuffed. So I did a Google search. It turns out, Shaquille, you might find this number shocking. If you want to know why we've got a bloody housing shortage, in 2023 to 2024, 2,832 insolvencies for builders. No wonder we've got...
And without even knowing the numbers that you're referring to, most of them probably were bankrupted by the tax office.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Because, as I understand it, most businesses, small businesses, go under because of tax office obligations, right? And this is the issue. And as you said, you got a few blokes that are just trying to have a go, and this is what they end up with, right? And they end up with heavy-handed government, and a government that doesn't care.
Yeah.
But again, and I really want to drive this point home, because I'm hoping that members of the IPA, I'm hoping that members of Sky News, I'm hoping that members of the Liberal Party are watching, right? Get your act together.
Yeah.
People are extraordinarily frustrated at the Labor Party right now, and you're not offering them an alternative.
No.
Half of the things that we're so pissed off about are things that you've decided to support. What do you think's going to happen?
Shaq, this isn't a boast. This is just what I'm trying to say in terms of a statement of fact. Over the last, since I committed to going out there and teaching people who's punching you, why they're punching you, and how you can punch back politically. 2020, I fought 8 elections, local, state, and federal, plus a referendum on top of that. When we fought the Victorian election against the Hitler, being, what the freedom movement saw as the Hitler, being Dan Andrews, 300 days of lockdown, most locked down city in the world.
Which I will say to my friends in the freedom movement, please don't use that term.
Yeah,
absolutely. We don't like that term being used on Donald Trump.
Yeah, not at all.
Please don't use it against our political opponents either.
Well, let's not get sidetracked here. The whole point was, this was the person that was their devil. And they're like, it doesn't get worse than this guy. The polls didn't like him. No one liked him. But the problem was, we fought that election, split, 9 freedom parties and a Liberal Party, and the Nationals. And what did we see? The guy won. He won, and not only with a majority in the lower house, but he had the numbers he needed to cross legislation in the upper house. Perfect time to resign, hand it off to Jacinta Allen, and ride off into the sunset. And it's exactly what's happened. And his statue's on the way. and God help that statue. And so I'm looking at that, and we fought that election, Shaquille, and I'm thinking, okay, why did that happen? It's because the Liberals didn't, one, differentiate themselves enough. They tried to be Labor light. Why do Labor light when I can get Coca-Cola full? And on top of that, the freedom parties were fighting over their freedom vote in the last Senate election in Victoria. It was 11.5%. That was the quantified freedom vote. These 9 parties were voting over that 11.5%. And so that's why when I'm like, back in October, I was saying this on camera. I was like, I've seen this pattern. We did this in November 2022. We're going to lose this. Yeah, we're going to lose this. And it's it's a huge curse, because it's just like, you can have a platform, you can reach millions of people, every month, and the people in power heading these political parties, they still won't listen. And it's just like, I can't do everything.
Well, I think, look, when it comes to the Liberal Party, what was his name? Matthew Guy, I think it was.
That's right. Yeah, I totally forgot his name. He was that unmemorable. I forgot his name.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Right?
Real beard after he lost.
The Liberal Party of Western Australia. Yeah. Right. No, I love that party. I'm friends with some members of the former Premier, the Liberal Premier. You know, they just made a mess of it. They made a mess of it. And this election in Western Australia should be recalled. That's a whole different...
It's shocking, yeah.
A whole different discussion.
Absolutely.
But that needs to be recalled. But it's not going to make much of a difference. The Labor Party is still going to win over there. You know, you have to suck it up when you lose. But when you lose, it's a question of, okay, well, who do you criticise, right? I can sit here and criticise the Labor Party all day long, right? I can sit here and criticise the Greens all day long. What difference is it going to make? Adam Bandt's not going to sit here and watch me have a crack at the Greens over their Greens policies, because he's going to go, well, that guy's never going to vote for us anyway. Like, you know, like, I'll hear what he's going to say, and then I'll dismiss 90% of it, and whatever he says that makes sense, okay, I'll go with, right? Yeah. What really upsets me is my own side.
Oh, me too. It's
right?
That's the stuff that makes me want to give up.
Yeah.
It's when you see your own side basically not stabbing you in the back, but when you see your own side not organised, not rallying.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, just a classic mentality of this. Let's say that this election in WA gets recalled. Let's just say that you're dying right now, are you? We're going to do some CPR.
I was hoping you'd mute the mic while
No, not at all. No. Like, I'm just looking. I'm like, is he dying? Do I need to see? So WA's election. Let's just say, okay, there's this private firm. They can't run the election. The Federal Election Commission has to step in and run it, basically, because they're the only ones with the personnel. All right. What do you think the Freedom parties do? They do one of two things. All right. They either are like, oh, beautiful, I knew it was rigged, let's run the exact same way again, because this time they'll actually count our votes. They'll all still get pretty much the same result. Or they do something completely out of the box, and they take those votes that happened in the last election, the one that was supposedly rigged, and they reorder one ticket, and they'd run it again as a singular ticket. I guarantee you'd get more votes. But they will not do that. And it's not because of the voters, it's not because of the lower house candidates, it's because of the upper echelon of these Freedom parties. That's the problem.
Well, it's because of political gamemanship.
Yeah.
Right. That's what it's all about.
Everyone wants to win that Senate spot, you know.
As I've said before, I've never voted Labor. And again, I will say, that doesn't mean I never would. That doesn't mean I never will vote for Labor Party. If I happen to be of age when Bob Hawke was running, I think I probably would have voted for him.
Yeah.
For everything I know about history, right? Paul Keating, again, I may well have voted for the guy.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe I wouldn't have. I don't know. I wasn't old enough.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing is a Liberal national coalition that's letting us down.
Yeah.
Now, I've never voted for the Nationals, not because I don't like them, because I've never lived in an area where they've actually been competing. But, you know, if the Liberals are going to let us down, hey, Nationals, can you step up?
Yeah.
Can you step up? Because I know a lot of farmers, especially in Western Australia, right? Like, I know a lot of people living in rural Australia that are really pissed off. And, like, hey, Nats, can you step up your game a little bit?
Yeah. 100%.
And if you don't, you end up with all of these fragmented, so-called freedom parties, right? And you got, 12 of them, I think there is at the moment when we were looking the other day.
9, yeah.
9?
Yeah, freedom to fail.
Right. And what do? And they're disorganised. And it's difficult to organise them all into one group. The other issue is that people will vote for one of those parties, but their preferences flow to parties that they may not agree with.
That's right.
And, it's a significant issue.
Problem. Yeah. Look, I have a solution on that. I actually mentioned it on my last podcast with the Libertarian, but I haven't put the clip out so people can't see that clip. But I've thought a lot about this and how to meander through these. Because the freedom movement, I've described as, it's like herding cats that think they're lions. And herding cats is tough. If you've ever tried to try to take a photo of cats, it's impossible. But herding cats that think they're lions, they've all got their own, like, no, I am certain I want to go and do this. They've all got their own agendas and they sort of go everywhere. It's like the Tower of Babel when God struck the people of the Tower of Babel, and they all spoke different languages and went everywhere. So it feels like that sometimes. But can I just pick back up? Sorry, guys, I know I'm all over the place with regards to the commentary, but it's been a while since I've seen Shaquille, and I got sick, he got sick. I think you're still on some pretty heavy painkillers as well.
Yes.
So hence if you're wondering why his
Yeah, so for the audience, I'm on drugs. That's brilliant. And I'm on some pretty heavy painkillers because of a recent surgery I had. So I do apologise if I am rambling slightly, but my rambles normally make sense. And I'm just gonna say this once again, with everything that you said. Again, it's our side that's letting us down.
100%.
And it's our side that we need to criticise.
Yeah.
It's our side that... Look at the Teals, right?
Yeah.
Look, the blue ribbon, liberal areas that they took, right? They took it because of the Liberal Party and the National Party not being prepared to understand what people are really concerned about, right? And it's the same thing today. And, people, again, I know I get a lot of emails and messages or emails to Joel that he sends to me saying, why are you so unpatriotic and you're going to leave Australia and you've left Australia and etc. The answer is because I feel like I've got more freedom and liberty and I have a better life outside of here. And that breaks my heart because I want to be here. I want to be here in Australia. I want to share. I want to share my success with this country. I'm prepared to pay taxes, but you've got to make it fair and reasonable. And what you're doing, whether it be Labor or Liberal, I'm going to especially pick on Liberals for this. You sit there and you say that you support small businesses, but you push us overseas. You push people like me. Nobody. When I first left Australia, I was like 26, 27 when I first left. Okay. No 26 or 27-year-old Australian. I was born here. I was born in Western Australia. Nobody my age should ever leave this country because they think there's better opportunities overseas. That shouldn't happen. Now, there are some exceptions. If you're an actor or a singer or something, yeah, fair enough. But for someone like me, why would you not want me here? Most other countries that I go to roll out the red carpet and say, please come bring your expertise, bring your knowledge, we want you here. And you come back to Australia and you're hit with politicians and political rules and regulations that make it impossible to do anything here.
It's ridiculous.
And that's why people like myself leave. Yeah. And that's what Stephen Pettis was talking about when he was on.
Yeah, we've got to get him back on ahead of this election. Yeah. And that's the thing, a lot of people from that episode we did, because that one did very well. It's like 1.5 million views for, what was it, episode 15 or something. You guys, from what I could read in the comments, people, especially the young men, there was a big uptick in the young men on the statistics on that, especially on Instagram and TikTok. Yeah. They're like, I respect these guys because they built something. And they listen to you when you say, guys, if you're struggling to get ahead, it's to an extent, yes, it's on your own back. But to an extent, it is harder here. And when you go overseas, it feels like you've just dropped an 80-pound pack. And that's what needs to be, and that's why I'm talking about this construction industry. I've got to get some guys in that have just gone under and ask them the question, because guys, going back to it, where there is no shortage of builders, there are plenty of them. The idea that, almost 3,000 of builders went under in the span of like a year, 2023 to 2024, is nuts. 2,832 insolvencies. And what was the reason for that? Rising material costs. I saw this firsthand just in 2020. I saw it from pre-COVID. It was mid-2019. I worked in that material cost to mid-2020. I saw it in real time. I worked on something like 20 different tenders. So different projects ranging up to, tiny to quite decently sized medium. And when I look at these these reasons they've given. Yep, there were COVID disruptions with supply chains because I don't know if you guys realize this, we don't make anything in Australia anymore. So all the electrical stuff, the light fittings, everything, a light fitting.
Why would you?
Sorry?
Why would you
Make anything here?
Why would you make anything here?
Yeah, but this is the problem. The fact that we didn't make anything during COVID, especially with a lot of these electricals, it then meant there was a shortage because China didn't send it out. So with something like a light fitting going from $20 to $55, times that by 1,000 light fittings in a very basic, place, the costs blow out. And the problem is a lot of these things change so rapidly. So many of these builders went under. They talk about a skilled labour shortage that, guys, on the back of all this immigration, them using that as a justification to bring all these people in, remember this statistic. The amount of people we are bringing into this country that are skilled for the construction industry is 0.6% of those coming in, those 1.1 million or whatever it is people coming in. It's complete crap. It's a lie. They are not bringing in high-quality people into this country with skills to build more houses. And even the high-quality builders that were born, raised, and developed a skill set and expertise and experience in Australia, those guys are going under. So if that's your supply side of all these construction developments, and we've got too much demand from the amount of people coming from overseas, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, we just got 200,000 students come in February. 200,000 foreign students. It's not sustainable.
I think, look, you're a bit younger than me. Not much, but a little bit younger than me. I've known Stephen for, what am I? I'm 41, so I've known him 15, not quite 20 years, but almost 20 years, right? We were having these conversations back then. We first met, right? We were talking about this exact same issue. Now, my parents immigrated to this country, and they worked their way up, and they're extremely patriotic about this country, right? I had extended relatives come over. My birthday is on the 15th of December. So they come over during December. Took them into the city. And this is the Muslim side of my family. And they said, "Oh, where's all the Christmas lights? Where's all the Christmas display?" I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have them. You'd have to go to the Muslim areas of Sydney to see the Christmas displays because you won't see them in Sydney City."
Oh yeah,
right.
That's right. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Indian Independence Day is the same as Australia Day, 26th of Jan. They did nothing for Australia Day, but yet they did something for Indian Independence Day.
Yeah.
Like what? Like what is going on?
Oh no, it's insane. Right? It's insane, isn't it?
So we from all over the world have come to this country. I am, you are, we are Australian. We've come from all over the world to try to create a better life for ourselves. We don't generally judge each other. We generally, celebrate each other's cultures. And yet, we're left in a country with politicians that are dividing us completely. We're left with a country where the Children's Hospital doesn't have enough money, where life support machines apparently are in a shortage at major hospitals in Australia, right? Where we have ramping going on with ambulances not being able to get people into emergency rooms. We have not enough nurses, not enough doctors. Teachers that are being told that, well, don't teach about maths and English and science. Let's teach about gender and sexuality to 8-year-olds.
Yeah,
right. This is what we're left with, and the vast majority of Australians who are on the right, who are on the left, who are moderate, across the political spectrum, are fed up with it.
Yeah,
and what we're left with is a political apparatus that has left us all behind.
Bunch of clowns. is what
Absolutely.
it is. Absolute bunch of clowns, and that's the problem we're trying to address.
And what they're going to end up with is more and more people who will unfortunately listen to people like myself, listen to people like Stephen Pettis, or Travis and Aaron from Edge Radio in Australia, who say, "Oh, to hell with this, let's go overseas."
Yeah, literally.
Let's go live somewhere else. Right? I'm sick and tired of this. We'll earn the money here, but we'll go overseas. A report just came out, I think it was on news.com.au. If you're going to sell a house, you have to get a clearance from the tax office. Now, apparently this has been out since 2016, but they've slightly increased the rate from 12.5% to 15%. If you want to sell your house, you need to get a clearance from the government that says that you're a resident of Australia. Because if you don't get that clearance, the seller, which is presumably going to be the other real estate agent, has to withhold 15% off the sale price, the total sale price. And if you haven't got the right document, you'll have to claim it back at the next tax year.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of things that I'd like to just ask about that. Firstly, one, why would you do that to Australians? It's ridiculous. Two, yes, okay, apparently it's supposed to be a free document. How long is it going to be free for? But third, I'd like to ask, hey, do foreign residents of Australia only have to pay 15% in taxes? Because depending on the circumstances, that means that they might actually end up paying less tax than Australian citizens would. Now, I haven't looked into this enough, so somebody might fact check me and I'm incorrect, but does that not sound a little bit ridiculous?
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
And what you're doing now is you're making the everyday Australian, the person that bought their house 40 years ago, and now they're about to retire, and they're selling the house so that they can afford the exorbitant costs of nursing homes, right? They've now got to go get this tax document. Otherwise, 15% of their money is going to be withheld. Is there a reason for that? Like, is there a logical reason that somebody can give me for that?
Yeah.
Or is this just more government overreach?
It's ridiculous. We're talking...
And why wouldn't someone like myself, or Stephen Pettis, or many other people that we've mentioned, just say, "At hell with it. We're going overseas."
Yeah, look, I'll be very clear with my audience. I've said it a few times. Unless the freedom movement, has a serious moment of introspection after this election, don't take it for granted that I'm still here. Give me 60 days after the election, I'll tell you, if I'm hanging around, because it's I told you this when I was in the US, and we've got to do a whole podcast about the US trip. It was amazing. The job offers there, they are hungry for competent people, and Aussies do tend to flourish there, really flourish. I talked to a few guys I'd seen when they were trying to do it in Australia, what they were doing, and they went over there and they're flying. Land of opportunity. Everyone's got an abundance mindset. In Australia, you try to get ahead. If you're a young person in politics, they pull you down. Your own people, not the enemies. Enemies are going to be enemies, Politicians are going to politician. But your own side, they're like, oh, we need more young people involved in politics. And then, they just
that's why I said what I said before.
Yeah.
Right? Tony Burke's never going to ring me and say, hey, can you lay off? Can you lay off us?
Yeah.
Because I'm not Labor Party supporter, right?
Of course, yeah.
I've criticised his policies. So he's going to sit there and go, okay, well, he's not on my side. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Right, cool. I'd absolutely sit down and have a chat with the guy.
Yeah.
But, he's not on my side of politics.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
Yeah.
When it comes to people flourishing, how heartbreaking is it to just, repeat what you just said, that Australians flourish when we go overseas? Yeah. That's a heartbreaking scenario. It's a scenario that we shouldn't have. It's a scenario that we should fight against. And for those of you that claim to be part of the so-called freedom parties, fight freedom then. Fight for freedom. Do something. Because at the moment, our country is being overrun by corporate politicians. And corporate politicians aren't just on the Labor side. They're in the Liberals. They're in the Nats. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care if I leave, and they don't care if you leave. So if we really want to make Australia something, and I'll really address something to the left. For those of you that are Labor Party supporters, I'm sure there's not very many of you watching. What was the Eureka Stockade about? What did they fight for? They fought against government. That's the great birth of the Labor Party in this country.
Yeah.
So surely at some level, you must be upset at government. You must be upset at the people that are in charge of government. Do something about it, right? Formulate yourselves. Bring yourselves together and fight against what you hate. Because otherwise our country is just going to become another corporatocracy.
That's right.
That's what we're going to be.
These politicians, you know what it's like? It's like, the ship's gone down and they've got their sack of gold and they're sort of making off with the gold of the ship. That's exactly what it is with these politicians. They are not of conviction. They are basically enriching themselves and then they're out. And that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call it there. We will do a follow-up on this particular budget issue next this coming Thursday. Peter Dutton is going to deliver his remarks. That will start at about 7:30, so we'll start slightly earlier, 7:20. But I'm going to keep going through.
I'll try not to be on painkillers for that.
On painkillers, okay.
No. I'll try and see if I can stay awake.
Yeah.
Through Peter Dutton's response.
Yeah.
Because if not, can you just maybe put a few pillows there?
Yeah, sure.
Mattress.
I will.
So I can fall asleep while I'm like half listening to Peter Dutton's response.
Yeah.
My goodness.
No, literally. I'm a bit worried about the whole. Even Peter Dutton had, they were all on their phones. You might notice during the speeches with Albo. It wasn't even like they were like looking at him. But no, I will be streaming that this Thursday, and we've got, believe it or not, between now and then we have 2 podcasts, actually 3 podcasts, which is insane. We've got David Flint tomorrow, Dr. Joanna Howe tomorrow, and on Thursday we've got the Senate candidate for New South Wales for One Nation coming in, and then we've got the stream that night. So look, guys, we're doing that's 6 streams this week. It's nuts. So if you could support us at Buy Me a Coffee, $4 a month. If you saw me in the street, heck, you'd buy me a beer. Think of it that way. But on top of that, the volunteer funnel for Turning Point Australia is up. So if you want to go volunteer for your favourite freedom party, go to tpaust.com.au. You can click which party you want to support, which state you're in, which seat you're in. If you're not sure which seat you're in, you can search underneath which seat you're in and send your details off, and that'll go off to them. If you want to letterbox drop, if you want to hand out how to vote cards on election day or in pre-poll, or put up posters, there's about 12 different roles that you can help fill, each to their ability, of course. If you don't know how to do something, you can always ask them. But I'm not retaining that data. That's literally just a rugby ball approach. You pass the data, and then I pass it off to the people you want it to go to. So Gerard Rennick's party, there's 8 different parties. There's obviously One Nation, Trumpeter Patriots, Libertarians. I won't name them all. But the point is, we've got to get mobilised. We've got to stem the bleeding. This is going to be a rough election, and we need to make sure Albo has less power rather than more by targeting lower house seats and targeting the Senate. But Shaquille, thank you so much for coming on. God bless you. And I'm looking forward to doing Thursday again with you.
You're totally breaking my heart, because your prediction from last year that there would be a Labor minority seems to come true. Even Sky News is now.
Oh yeah, they came around. Came around. I was looking at Peter Credlin, and Peter. I do respect her opinion on these things. I was watching a segment on the way here, and she was like, "Yeah, no, it's going to be Labor minority."
It just breaks my heart. And you know what? It's not because I'm a fan of Peter Dutton. It's just that I just dislike Albo so much. even tonight, looking at him in the background, he just looks so miserable.
Yeah.
Maybe he should Botox his cheeks or something. He just looks so unhappy.
No, you know what it was? You know what it was? Because this is the thing. These are real conversations they have. They're like, all right, this is the box. Who are we going to sit behind him? All right, Albo, you're going to need to be staunch face because we want to outdo Dutton in terms of people take you seriously rather than you have bungles and you can't remember the cash rate. We're going to have the Minister for Immigration because he needs a bit of help because the polling in his seats indicating he may lose his seat. Minister for Immigration, Tony Burke. Then we're going to have 3 white women sitting behind them because our votes are struggling with women. Both major parties are right now, actually, and especially suburban women. It's gone to the Greens and the Teals. And then we'll have a woman of colour back there as well, Aboriginal woman. That's the frame.
Well, she never smiled. Did you notice?
I did. No, I did.
The entire thing.
Yeah.
She never once smiled. You know, but of course, Labor Party, she can't cross the floor. So even the things that she didn't agree with, she just had to sort of sit there.
Yeah.
So stoically, she sat there and watched.
You know, she was all right. You know, when the Aboriginal stuff kicked off and there was violence in Alice Springs, she was one of the ones that broke ranks with Labor and said, we're not doing enough on this. We need to do better. I actually really respect what she said on that topic. But anyways, guys, we are going to wrap up. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry for making it a late one. It's almost 9:30. But God bless you all. Enjoy all the content. Give it a share. And let's combine our efforts and see what we can do to stem the bleeding this election. I'll see you guys all later. God bless you. And have a good one.
Let's look at those last